Welcome everyone to this conversation about resources with Salima Nagy from TISNIT and Claudia Rodriguez from Mexico City. My name is Colin Kifa and the other facilitator is Nora Martin. First, we are going to introduce both architects.
Claudia Rodriguez is a Mexican practitioner that combines traditional architecture education with land management training. Her intervention in architecture focuses on collaborative processes that develop projects related to landscape. Her work responds to an ultimate aim, minimizing buildings' impact on the environment, always following a territorial gaze.
Welcome to both to EPFL.
Now, Claudia, if you don't mind sharing us your screen.
Oh, here you are.
Welcome.
Hello. Hi, hello. Thank you very much for this presentation. I'm very honored. I feel very honored to be here with Salima. I will talk about architecture as a territorial practice. Territory has to do with how people use space, how they communicate ownership or occupancy of that space. Geographic and ecological variables determine a territory, and it is intrinsically linked to its resources availability. To explore these ideas, I will focus on two projects that, by the way, are all collaborations. Reserva El Peñón is a country house settlement for 60 families in a site of 200 hectares of an oak pine tree forest, 2 hours from Mexico City. This fragmented territory is under a strong process of deforestation. This is the territory I'm talking about. So there's a lot of pressure on the existing ecosystems for a series of reasons. Illegal logging, overgrazing, the opening of forested land for illegal settlements, as well as real estate development, and the overexploitation of water resources that are being sent to Mexico City. When we were called to assess this site, there was a plan to build a resort with a golf course in this property. We chose to take a completely different direction and explore how this master plan and infrastructure project could become a regenerative landscape project. So some rough numbers of this master plan. It's 60% of the land is destined to conservation. We built 14 water reservoirs that store enough water to fulfill 30% of the needs of the 60 households. And we have more than 15 kilometers of pedestrian paths, so you can really discover the forest. Water scarcity is a big global concern and one of the main focus of adaptation strategies to climate change. Reserva El Peñón is water autonomous. It covers all of its water needs from rainwater harvesting, with no external connections to other sources of water or sewage system. By studying the topography and the hydrological patterns, we could understand the terrain as micro watersheds and design an interconnected system of small dams where roads and paths act as water collectors. This design is based on the key line technology developed in the 50s, it's now new, in Australia. And the aim is to increase resistance to dryness, control erosion and flooding, store rainwater, and improve soil fertility. So instead of letting water run off quickly, causing erosion in the terrain, this hydrological design conducts water so it takes the longest possible path, giving it time to infiltrate before it is finally held in water reservoirs or leaves the site naturally as a stream. Decentralization and redundancies are key to the resilience of ecosystems. Reserva El Peñón was conceived as a system where each element should accomplish many functions, and the essential functions are addressed by more than one element. In this sense, water reservoirs are very good examples. They serve many purposes: water availability, habitat for different species, microclimate regulation, natural drainage, and stormwater control, while serving as social spaces for recreation, play, and contemplation. They function as a structure in landscape elements. They actually structure the master plan. Their particular character is given by the way the slopes are designed and by the vegetation composed of wild grasses, reeds, water lilies, and algae. This aquatic plant composition works as a biological filter that helps the stored water in good drinking quality. Every household must contribute to water management. The commitment is to self-provide to cover up to 70% of the water each house will be consuming. This is achieved with water harvesting and wastewater treatment systems. Paths and roads are excellent water collectors. They are constructed with an integrated ditch on their side that channels water runoff. Most of the roads follow contour lines, so there is little erosion and minimal maintenance. Properties inside the reserva are divided by hedges, designed as biological corridors that connect the flatter parts of the landscape with the higher forest areas. These hedges are composed of native species with no irrigation. They deliver herbal teas, berries, fruits, firewood. Beside the ecosystem services forests provide, they contain multiple plant species that have sustained human life for thousands of years. Plants provide most of our food resources, as well as raw materials for tools, shelter, and the manufacture of everyday objects. The starting point of this landscape project was a biological survey aimed to understand the existing species and define the vegetal palette. The selection was based on native species and complemented with fruit trees, considering three vegetal strata: trees, shrubs, and ground covers. The main objective was to respect the natural character of the landscape and design to build guilds. A guild is a grouping of plants, trees, and animals that work together to help ensure their health and productivity. For example, one type of plant has the capacity to fix nitrogen, while other attracts insects that carry out pollination. This concept is a key ecological notion, and I think it can be integrated in the way we design our livelihoods. An important portion of the land is destined to food production based on agroecological principles. We thought it as a direct way to connect the people living here with the resources and cycles of the land. By using natural resources judiciously, we can gain respect for nature, understand that our well-being is tied to its existence. We need to ensure more sustainable management practices for water, land, soil, biodiversity. Human use has to be integrated into ecological restoration. The forest or woodland has a life cycle. A certain amount of wood is always available and can be harvested and used. We established a workshop to transform fallen tree trunks into construction materials. This space also gives us an opportunity to exchange skills and knowledge with people from outside the project. The intent of the workshop is to use the available wood supply with simple technologies while experimenting with design possibilities. We optimize the use of the inside harvested wood in two different ways. Small pieces and material from pruning are used for heating, compost, and shredded wood for ground covers. Bigger parts are treated, dried, and cut to use them for construction, to build furniture and make landscape interventions as part of the forest management and life cycle. I will show some glimpses of different architectural projects that I designed at Reserva El Peñón. So you can see how these ideas, the ideas I have been talking about, can somehow become architecture. Although it is the same territory, each project is an expression of a particular micro-territory. I see them as interpretations or recreations of the natural world. They are architecture and they are also landscape features. So now I will talk a little bit about a second project, Miravalle. Territory involves particular ways of thinking about a geographic space. It reflects ways in which space is imagined, and in that sense, it is a social phenomenon. The main question we had in Miravalle was regarding the way in which the city ends and how it meets the landscape at its edge. Miravalle began as an informal settlement in the 80s in the outskirts of Mexico City. It is part of its most densely populated borough, Iztapalapa, with almost 2 million inhabitants. The urban sprawl literally collides into the Santa Catarina mountain range, a group of small-sized volcanoes that difficult the expansion of this never-ending city. Our first impression of Miravalle was that of a distant dormitory suburb that offered little opportunities for work or recreation. Our perception was that its inhabitants were feeling alienated from urban life, living in a marginal neighborhood with many problems, lack of services, violence, poverty. At the same time, we could see two major resources in this territory: people that held a really strong sense of community, autonomy, and self-agency, and the Volcano, a landmark feature, a natural space that, strangely for us as visitors, did not play a role on the life of the inhabitants of Miravalle. The project started with a group walk to the volcano, as a way to recognize communal territory. The walk became a social action relevant in many, many ways. It changed the perception the community had of the volcano that was considered almost as a threat, a wildland, and it offered a great opportunity to look back at the city from the perspective of nature. The walk led to conversations and reflections on the possibilities of this particular territory. We could identify resources that were not visible before and therefore not valued by the community. Feeling part of a bigger system, the mountain range, the valley, the environmental services there together allow the view back into the neighborhood itself, to understand its scale, context, and character, to see the relationship with the city and the way the volcano functions as a natural border for urban expansion. In this change of perspective, suddenly Miravalle became privileged. Miravalle's position seemed privileged. Up to this day, 5 years later, these walks and picnics have become an important activity for the community. They are enjoying this natural space and the fantastic views of the city and the volcanoes. Then we thought of a way in which we could connect that experience of the group walk to the built context of the neighborhood. So going from the scale of the volcano to the scale of public spaces and to the personal space. Miravalle lives in the paradox of being located next to a mountain range that could represent a major water reserve, while at the same time face a day-to-day reality of water scarcity. Water has to be bought or carried from far away. Drinking water is of very poor quality. Rainwater is abundant, but it runs directly to the sewage system, overloading its capacity with major floods. There can be water shortages that last more than a week or two. We wanted to provide a concrete example of replicable and accessible technologies that could empower the community and help them build the autonomy they wanted. The project uses an existing structure to harvest and filter rainwater, transforming the dome into a public source of water. Was a practical intervention and also a symbolic action for the community. Water accessible for human consumption, while having other collateral benefits. Supply free water to the lunchroom, give a second use to an existing building, and to do this together. Also, although these projects differ radically in character and in the strategies is implemented, they both share a common approach. It is the territory that informs and somehow guides the design process. So for me, architecture is a way to establish a personal relationship to a specific site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudia.